It's super speedway racing as we race toward the playoffs here in the NASCAR Cup Series. We've got all of our favorite DFS picks, our bets, and of course, just flat out NASCAR talk. Welcome down to the back road. We'll see you soon.
It's a non-points race, but it is a short race. Checker flag. That's where all this race
Welcome into the back road. Yes, it is the same back road, but no, you are seeing a couple of different hosts today. Seth and Elliot, we gave them the week off. They've worked hard enough. They've got to catch their breath. You know, they got stuff to do, so we'll give them week off. They hand the keys over to me, though. I am Villagomez. Tino Pattigno. This is our first time together on screen. If the explosions are too much for you, I'm sorry. But Tino, it's a pleasure. I cannot believe that I'm getting to work with you, and I'm excited to get to host the show with you today.
Yes, dude, I am so excited for this. I think the excitement and the energy levels are going to be off the charts. Thanks again to Seth and Elliot, like you mentioned. And I mean, what better way to have us now become this awesome dynamic duo with Daytona now coming up this weekend. I feel like there's no better time for us to get into some picks and to break everything down for the people.
Much like you never know what's going to happen on a super speedway, you never know what's going to happen on this show, especially this episode for sure. Checking in, Cooking at the Lake House, saying hello, everyone. I know it's going to be a damn good show. We hope so. We hope that their faith in us is not misplaced. And Charles saying, love to see Tino again tonight, my man. Rod, good to see you back. Charles, as always, it's good to see you. Marcus was jumping in. Marcus claimed first, by the way. So Marcus, you claimed first and wants to know what everyone's pick is at Daytona. Don't worry, Marcus, we got you covered for sure. Plenty of picks to make at Daytona. Tino, super speedway racing is always fun in that you never know what's going to happen, like we said. But as we get closer to the playoffs and all these storylines start to come together, that ramps it up, especially the second time through Daytona. Daytona 500 starts it, but the fall Daytona really ramps up the action.
Yeah, and that's, to me, the most exciting part is we get to go back to Daytona, right? We saw who was fast, and we've seen super speedway racing, Daytona, Atlanta, Talladega, and I do believe as much chaos and as much, uncertainty there is to these races, there are drivers that consistently rise to the top, and there are drivers we can find to bet on and pick and choose to really come out and make us some money in this one. Could it be Ryan Blaney, Bubba Wallace, even Kyle Busch seems to stand out to me in this one. Throwing a few names out there. I'm sure we'll get into it in a little bit more, but I'm excited for this one because it is close to the playoffs now too. This is one thing that's huge about this race is normally it's a playoff cut line race, the last shot for people to make it in. They do have another, chance next week at Darlington, but 60% of the field I feel like knows they got to give it their all in this one.
Yeah, there's definitely no holding back, and now there's even guys like Denny Hamlin that even have more of just an incentive to go out and run well. He just got docked a ton of points today, and like the hits just keep on coming for Denny Hamlin. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of guys trying to rear up though, and we've got all that. The boss checking in on us, Seth. What's up, y'all? On the road to Charlotte. I hope we behave ourselves. I'm hoping that we don't piss off mom and dad when they're gone. That's all I'm hoping for tonight. But on the show tonight, we're going to recap Michigan. What was crazy? A crazy Michigan weekend, as it were, right? We had but the race went to 2 days. It was just a weird, funky situation. We'll give you some of that latest news. We'll break down Daytona. We'll give you our best bets and also the DFS tier. So, Tino, let's look back at Michigan in the rear view. This was a tale of 2 days, obviously, as we started the race on Sunday. Thought we could get most of it through, only got about 50 some odd laps in on Sunday, and then they had to red flag it, pack it up, bring it back on Monday. Tyler Reddick, though, proved that he could outlast all of the madness that happened within the last few laps to get the job done. But Tino, overall, for a 2-day race, I mean, this played out in two completely different manners. And I, for one, I don't know. I wish we could have seen what happens, because Sunday was fantastic racing right off the jump, and Monday seemed to be okay until the end. I wish we would have seen more of Sunday on Monday, though.
Yeah, to me, I think for what Michigan, only having one Michigan race a year now, right? To me, I wanted it to perform, and I think it did so. It did hurt the momentum I feel like we were bringing from Richmond. A lot of eyeballs on the sport, right? For better or for worse. But to me, I'm in favor of, despite the actions that happened there, Austin Dillon and everything like that coming out of Richmond, I thought it was awesome to see everyone talking about NASCAR. I'm always going to be pro anything you can do for the sport to get eyeballs on it. Let's have that. And I think we had that. It was a shame Mother Nature got in the way. So to your point there, Sunday, if we could have had the full race, I thought it would have been perfect. Monday, I did think it got off to a little bit of a slow start, but there at the end, I was pretty pleased with seeing, the different strategies come into play. Kyle Busch leading laps. Hey, how about Chris Buescher too, right? Getting involved in that wreck and able to rebound. And now he's one of the drivers that has a good advantage in the playoff picture heading into Daytona this weekend.
Yeah, Buescher close to cashing a top 5 bet, even in general. I tossed out Chris Buescher as a top 5 car, and I thought for sure that was sunk by the start of it, but he rallied back for a really good finish. And you're right, Tino, that was the thing about it too. The beginning of it was a little bit slow going, but as the strategies started to pull again, because we saw the guys that had pitted on Sunday, right? They got gas on the car on Sunday and still had to wait till Monday to have it all play out. So yeah, there was so much different strategies going on that at the end, the Austin Dillon thing, though, I guess we have to talk about it because it happened at Michigan. But I mean, initially, Tino, what was your take when you watched it? When you watched it live, what did you think right off the bat?
Well, to me, I was surprised because I've never seen anyone do anything like that, and I was a little. I can't say that I respected it or I will never be, able to defend his type of actions of taking out 2 drivers like that. But to me, I was almost like, okay, wow, like he's willing to do whatever it takes to get the victory there. And to him to then have it be taken away, and not be able to make the playoffs based off of his win that he got at Richmond is something we've never seen before either from NASCAR. So those factors then heading into Michigan there, and then his teammate Kyle Busch leading laps there. I don't know. To me, it seems like RCR might be heading in the right direction come Daytona. Maybe we see the 3-car get revenge from his own doing. I don't know there, but it was insane to see. I was honestly at a loss for words reacting to it. I was just out of my mind because I've never seen anyone spin out 1 driver, sure, but 2 for the win. Jeez.
I was wondering if they were replaying any of my NASCAR Thunder games when I just would send it straight down into the turn and be like, I don't care who's in front of me. I'm wrecking everybody. I was collecting red, the when the mad meter gets up there and you're like pissing off every driver. Yeah. RCR is back. RCR is still there. I don't know that, but Charles, thank you so much for this one, for the youth riders and continued support of IBT. Love spending my weeknights hanging out with y'all. Charles, we enjoy spending, and everybody, the youth riders out here and everybody with IBT appreciates your donations, because tell you what, this is a labor of love, but it's a great labor of love, and people love the content. So we love to see that you love it. It's a lot of love going on right now, Tino. I'll do that. But as far as your betting card was concerned, what were some of the bigger hits that you had on Sunday/Monday?
Well, I'll be honest, I was very glad to see Tyler Reddick getting the victory there. I had him at 11-1 earlier in the week, and he proved that he did deserve the victory. Not 1, but 2 overtimes in order for him to get it done, holding off William Byron. So that was a big cash for me. Also had Daniel Suarez top 10, and that was big because now Suarez is on a streak, continuing to get those top 10ers. And honestly, to me, it looked like he was in position. Michigan, he finished sixth there in this race last year, and he had the momentum coming from Richmond. I thought he was going to be better during the race as a whole as he was, but he really needed those 2 overtimes to sneak in there, and I'll take that. That was a big cash for me. A couple ones that didn't hit for me was Bubba Wallace top 5 finish. I did double up with Reddick, but Bubba had a rocket ship. Had he not got involved in that wreck, I think that one was a no sweater, but ultimately happy, ended up plus money throughout the day because of Tyler Reddick and Suarez there. But how about you? How'd you fare in the Michigan Monday that it was?
I was also a sad Bubba Wallace ticket holder because that was one of the bigger ones that I had Wallace over Gibbs. So I it wasn't like a huge, it was minus 110. So it wasn't like a gigantic one, but that one was cashing for the better part of the day. And then he got caught up in his nonsense. So ridiculous. But I did have Carson Hocevar as a top 10. You want to talk about somebody that needed all 600 or all whatever, how many laps there were, the 5 extra laps that there were in overtime to get there. But boy, I was sweating that one to the very end because it was Hocevar in like 11th. And then you would see his name skirt up and skirt back down. And I'm like, Carson, hold the damn spot. Just hold the spot. And then when the line checked up and in front of him and he had to maneuver, I was like, he's not getting back there. And sure enough, he got there. Carson Hocevar, top 10, plus 450 on that one. I had Blaney. I was only taking Blaney because I figured, he's on a decent roll. Ford had won like the last 9 races in a row. So I figured taking a good Ford would be good. And he was at plus 850. So I thought that was a good hit. But yeah, I mean, other than that, the rest of it just kind of fell by the wayside. Logano, I was high on Logano. And well, we know what happened to Logano. I don't know if he knows what happened to Logano, but I know he did. But yeah, I mean, other than that, Hocevar was the biggest hit on the day.
Okay, well, that's still pretty impressive, and we have to sort of thank Ryan Blaney and Chase Elliott for allowing the Hocevar and Daniel Suarez top 10s to get through, right? They were racing hard for position, both drivers inside the top 10, and they got into it a little bit, rubbing, racing hard up into the corners. They both wash up, and it just opens the door for our 2 top 10 guys. So, you win and you lose. I'll take it from there. So I appreciate those guys sort of stepping in and letting our bets cash.
100%. Well, Michigan is gone. It is in the rear view. Somebody's holding up a trophy. You too could hold up a trophy with our buddies over there at Trophy Smack. It's the one-stop destination for fantasy leagues this season. Elevate that league to the next level with the most unique and highest quality championship hardware in the industry. There's nothing like holding a trophy that you've won for a fantasy football championship, unless you actually were out there on the field playing for something yourself. But for those of me that would never be like that, holding the trophy is the next best thing. Trophy Smack has got there. Celebrate your league's champion with thousands of fully customizable trophies, rings, and belts using their so easy so easy I could do it design tool. And don't forget, no champion season is complete without a loser. You want to celebrate your losers as well? Trophy Smack has a growing collection of humiliating loser awards and punishments. Oh, and one more thing. Visit TrophySmack.com today and get a free 2-day shipping on all draft kits. No code necessary. All right, well, that does about for that. Let's start breaking down some Daytona tiers as we look in our tire tiers.
Yes, sir. I'm super excited to do this one here. Now, the tire tiers too, that is something that is going to be super special here, right? Like, this is something where when we look at Daytona, we need to break down all the guys for the DFS. We need to break down all the guys, and this helps us in the betting standpoint too. So let's go. I'm going to pull it up for us here. And, Rod, for you, when you're thinking of the tire tiers and everything like that, who is someone that immediately pops off to your mind as I continue to pull this up for us here?
As you continue to pull it up, look, this is one. It's funny because on super speedways, you definitely are. Although I tell you what, why don't you roll the tire tiers intro, and then we'll get to the tire tiers. That way we can keep this. Remember, the bosses have to be happy with it. So roll that tire tier intro, and then we'll get to the tire tiers. All right,
we made it.
There we go. We made it. Listen, that's fine. I absolutely love it. But and that gave me an extra second to not only that, but take a drink because I needed to take a sip there. Look, who immediately jumps off at the page at Daytona? There's a game we like to play, Tino, on our NASCAR gambling podcast show where we just take the wheel and we spin it on DFS because essentially that's kind of what it is. You never you can always say this person's the greatest on super speedways. You can lay out every single stat that backs it. Although on super speedways, it's not really that easy to come by. But then they got caught up in a wreck and it's all said and done. So when I think of super speedways, believe it or not, my first guess goes to, I don't even want to say it because Ricky Stenhouse has actually been damn good at Daytona in the next gen era. So, do you put your Ricky Stenhouse in the top tier? I don't know. Does that sound crazy?
Oh, I mean, I think it's not the craziest thing that I've heard about, making our tiers for this one. I think Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he's going to come with the good value too, right? He's going to be a driver that is not necessarily played that much throughout the season, but when we come to these super speedways, he'll be locked in. So you're thinking A tier for him?
I mean, look, he's $7,900, and like I said, when you're looking at the speed rankings from our friends at iFantasy Race, Daytona NASCAR Next Gen Speed Rankings, he's at the top of the list. It's funny and it's crazy to think of, but that's where Ricky Stenhouse sits right now. He's actually one of those guys where, like you said, on super speedways, he's one of the guys that you can count on. Daytona, I don't know. The last few times have been rough for him. He did win, but he crashed out of the last two. I don't know. Talk me out of it.
I don't think I can, honestly, because I do think he does come with that value. And another thing, too, is he needs to win to get into the playoffs, right? So I feel like that's another thing that Ricky's going to be high on coming into this weekend, is the fact that they do need a win for him. So, hey, tier A for me, for him, I think that's fair. Let's take a look at the chat as well. Charles saying Buescher needs to be tier A, and I don't have any arguments with that. Rod, what is your analysis with Buescher in this one? Because I feel like anytime we go to a super speedway track, and especially, hey, he is the defending winner here at Daytona, the summer race at least.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely somebody. And then so him, and if you're going to do that, you got to put Keselowski along with it, because those guys are back to back. You look at Buescher, the last three races on this track, Daytona 500 of 2023, fourth place. He won the fall. Earlier in the spring, he was 18th place. But I will say this, that RFK got off to a kind of slow start at the beginning of the season, right? They were sort of mid-pack for most of it. They started to pick it up. So I think whatever the Daytona 500 stats were for RFK, it's not necessarily indicative of how they've been running lately, and they always run together. So yeah, I think if you're gonna take the winner of this last race, put him up in the A's, and you got to put his teammate up there as well.
Definitely agree. And I think one thing that's important to note too is the fact that these RFK drivers, their cars are always set up very similar, if not identical. Last week at Michigan, believe they finished 5th and 6th. The week prior, like, there will be 19th and 20, or if they're in the back of the pack, 24th, 25th, 10th and 11th. Those guys are always very next to each other. And the one thing that I've noticed about Brad too, especially coming into this race, is Brad's already locked into the playoffs. So to get Buescher in is going to be something he's all in for. I can see the way they have him on the chart too, Brad behind Buescher. I can see them. I don't think Brad leaves Buescher's bumper the entire race. I think he'll do whatever it takes to push him towards the front. Let's see what the chat's saying here. Any Fords for tier A? To completely agree. Fords in this race, they've won 5 out of the last 10. Definitely agree with this one. Seth's in the chat as well. Are 2311 the best Toyotas this week? Well, let's talk about it, Rod. What do you think about that?
I don't know if they're the best. I think that Gibbs, they definitely need to bring it this weekend. They're pissed off about the Denny Hamlin situation. They're a little embarrassed at this point. Ty Gibbs needs to prove something. I've said it all season long. It's just a sophomore slump for Ty Gibbs. So he's going to have to bring it. But I don't know. And Seth, really, the only thing that I can think of is that, Truex is already retired, right? This is already a thing. He's might as well just call him retired. Like, I love him to death, and his retirement tour is not going well. Hamlin's pissed. Christopher Bell, I know there's a lot of,
whose BlaBberry dropped in uninvited.
Not sure what
pop-up ads. They ruin even the best of everything. But Christopher Bell, I know people are high on him this week, but I'm still not sold. And so okay, Seth. Maybe 2311 are the best Toyotas this week.
Well, see, the way I'm thinking about them is I look back at the last super speedway races we had this season, and I saw there were 6 drivers that finished inside the top 12 in multiple super speedway races that we had this season. So not all 3, it was only 2 out of the 3. Bubba Wallace was one of those drivers, and I feel like and the finishes were 5th at Daytona and then 5th at Atlanta as well. He got involved in the wreck there at Talladega with the other Toyota drivers, but to me, I'd be willing to put Bubba Wallace in tier A for this one.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with you on that one. And I guess if you're gonna do it, put Tyler Reddick. If you're gonna believe in the fact that those two are gonna be linked together as well. So yeah, okay, I'll go with you on it. Insofar as I think Bubba is gonna have a good day, and it'll be hard for Tyler Reddick to back-to-back win, but I do believe that he's obviously gonna be running up front because that's what Tyler Reddick does nowadays, and that's what you can expect out of Tyler Reddick. However, Seth, no love for Legacy Motor Club in this one. Kind of disrespecting the Toyotas of Legacy. I'm not putting them anywhere near A. Don't even get me going on that one. I have a soft spot for Jimmy Johnson, which is why my Legacy Motor Club thing is there. But yeah, not necessarily Karen. Anybody else you want to put in the A's there, Tino? I don't know.
Well, I think Charles said it best here. Do we include Hamlin with the 2311 crew? See, to me, I think it will be those 3 drivers all hooked up together trying to get Bubba into the playoffs. That was Denny Hamlin's mode last year. He was literally asked if you had to choose between pushing Bubba to the win or Ty Gibbs, who are you picking? And he said Bubba. And to me, Bubba Wallace is in the same position as he was last year, right around that playoff cut line. So to me, if Denny Hamlin, one of the best, if not the best super speedway racers right now, is going to do that, I think I can put him in the A because I do believe he's going to be following along with his driver there, trying to help him out the best he can. Rod, to you, does the value sort of equate to putting Hamlin in the A though?
What I like about Hamlin in his super speedway racing is that he knows how to feel it out. Like he's one of the best guys at feeling out how the energy is in those lines, and he can pull himself out and put himself back in again when he needs to. So I think that kind of experience is going to get him close up to the front. So yeah, I mean, if we're going to put the 2311 guys up there, we might as well put the owner up there as well. But I almost feel like that rounds out the A's. I can't really put anybody.
Think so?
Well, but this is Daytona, Tino. I don't know. Like, it's so hard.
See, to me, I think I would have to include at least one more Chevy, and that's what Charles is saying too. What other Chevy would you pick for tier A? Maybe Chase Elliott, but I just feel like he might be rostered in too many, and I feel like the value there might not make sense. Looking at who we got left on the board, see. My heart is telling me Kyle Busch. Here's why. I mentioned the whole stat before about Bubba Wallace being within the only 6 drivers to get a top 12 finish in multiple super speedway races this season. One of the others is Kyle Busch. So Kyle Busch in this one, we know how hard he's going to push to do it. Does the value to you, Rod, make sense for Kyle Busch to be an A, or do we put him one of the first guys in the B as we sort of transition to who and how they're going to be placed on this list?
Kyle Busch, $8,800 right now on DraftKings. I think that value is definitely worth putting him in the A tier. And I do think, I agree with you that he's actually going to have a good race. I think he's going to be in the running. In fact, I have him as an outright, spoiler alert. So yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Sweet. Sounds good to me. All right. I think to that point, now we move to the Bs. Now, who is going to be left here in this one? Who's going to start us off here in the B tier for you, Rod?
I would probably have to put, as I'm looking, maybe the Trackhouse guys. Maybe we put the 1 and the 99 in there, only because Ross Chastain, he's close, right? He's on the verge, so he needs to have something done and something done within the next couple races if he wants to make the postseason. Not locked in yet, skirting around the bubble. Can't make any mistakes, and this is a track and this is a race where you can lose more than you can gain, honestly. So he doesn't want to lose much in this one, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, definitely agree there. And I like that we put both the teammates there too. I feel like if they're going to be, it's not the bum drafting style that we have had in the past, but we do see guys work together. And I think that is going to be the mindset of, with Daniel Suarez being locked into the playoffs, he's going to be trying to push, just like we said before about Brad and Buscher. He's going to be trying to push Chastain towards the front. Now, if something happens, maybe Ross makes an aggressive move. We see him do it all the time. That sort of is what helps him in certain instances with these super speedways, but also takes him out at other times. Suarez could just be behind him, pushing him. if he does make a move that takes him out of the race, well, I'd still think Daniel will be up there. And for the value, also winner at Atlanta, another super speedway race that we saw this year. To me, I think Ryan Blaney has to be in this B tier. I'm not even taking a look at his value, but I just feel like with how good he has been, he could be a lock to be a winner in this one.
Blaney's just consistent. That's what Blaney is. Like, he's been able to just stay consistent through most of the season and find his way to the front and be able to keep out of enough trouble, although we've seen him in trouble this season, unfortunately, more times than I think he wanted to be. But I don't know. I think that's a good call because Blaney's going to be there around the end. Blaney is, as I look, $9,800 on DraftKings. So kind of a, upper tier B level guy, but I agree he should be up there. Charles saying McDowell should definitely be in front of Suarez. But listen, okay, I know that we see McDowell and we see that he won it here a while back, but let me read off his finishes since. 39th, 7th, 32nd, 28th, 13th, 36th. Has not been all that spectacular for Michael McDowell since he won a few years back. So I know we remember the win, and I know that we remember that Michael McDowell runs around the front, but he doesn't finish there more often than not. In fact, earlier in the spring, started second, finished 36th, tanked your DFS day.
Yeah, and that's something we don't want to have happen again. Talladega too. We saw what he's willing to do, take himself out for the win, and ultimately finish poorly because of that. I will say I'm not willing to put McDowell ahead of Suarez or even in the B tier because of that. I think we think of him as a strong super speedway racer. Fine, he has been there in the past, but realistically, the finishes, like you mentioned, when we're talking DFS, it hasn't been there. One driver, though, that Charles did bring up is William Byron. I think that is sort of along the same lines of Ryan Blaney. I'd be willing to put Byron in the B tier because of that.
Yeah, and something's got to give for him. He started the season red hot. He's cooled down a little bit. He picked it back up again last week, which is probably the indicator that you want, but I don't know if it's going to be as strong as it is. However, you can't leave him off of the B tier because he can catch fire and will be able to pick things back up again. So I'm with you on that. Tino, how about the 16 car of AJ Allmendinger? You guys, you sleep on AJ Allmendinger, but he has been a fantastic car at the Daytona Speedway. Look, 3rd place in 2017, 8th place in the fall of 2017, 10th place in the spring of 2018, 3rd in the fall of 2018, 6th, 29th, 6th. That's a string of crazy top 10 finishes for the 47 car and the 16 car. So it doesn't matter what you put him in. He's going to be in there. So I like the 16 as a tier B driver this week, a sneaky tier B driver this week, especially I'm looking for his price. I'm scrolling too far down because I don't think he's going to be in there, but yeah, I can't find his price right now, but definitely a sneaky tier B driver.
Yeah, and that's just the type of guy too, where I think if we did have his price, it's not going to be anything major high. Like, it's going to be something low, and that's a risk I'm willing to take with the finishes that you just listed off as well. He's been able to race towards the front, been able to have a lot of Chevys around him as well. I think that's going to be a benefit to him and that team to be able to have some of the other guys that will sort of be, Chevy's the biggest sample size in the race. That's just what it's going to be like. So if some guys do get taken out with the inevitable big one or other wrecks, I think with him having, those teammates or those manufacturer teammates around him, he'll have a good shot to win it. To me, another driver that I'm thinking of in this one is going to be Joey Logano. I'm hearing a lot of talk about Joey Logano in this one, and I feel like rightfully so. I think he's been really strong in this race last year. Also, other super speedway tracks, he's always one of the guys that rises to the front. Does his value match a B tier, or do they have him too overly priced in this one?
Yeah, I don't think they have him overly priced, but I would say definitely throw him up in the B tier. Honestly, this is a super speedway, and to be fair, this is one of those things where, like I say all the time on our show, we're just always like, it's a super speedway. We can make a case against or for any one of these drivers. Cody, my co-host on the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, always says Joey Logano, one of the hardest guys in the field to predict. He could come out, he could kick ass, he could come out, or he can get, wrecked up and collected. So, yeah, it's tough, but he's too good of a driver. He's too experienced of a super speedway driver to ignore and to leave out of the B tier.
Yeah, I like what we got going on so far. Is there any other ones that you're seeing? I think a few more drivers could be added to the B out of respect and out of the way they've just raced at super speedways. Maybe 3 or 4 of them. Which one would stand out to you the most here?
I honestly don't know. That's the hard part. I
Yeah.
hate Daytona and I love Daytona at the same time, because when you're making predictions, it's when you look at the speed and you look at the raw speed, it doesn't always line up to the race before, and it certainly won't line up with the race after. So
Mhm.
do we put the 20 car out of respect in there? I think at the top of the heap because he's a Gibbs car.
I would say so. I believe the 20 car, like from what I've seen out of him on super speedways, he's always one of the guys that is just there at the end. Like when you look at, maybe it's an overtime or the final restart, I feel like you see Christopher Bell just manage his car and manage his stuff better than other drivers, just sort of survive. And that's what you have to do in this one. If we're going to put him in it, I also feel like Chase Elliott is another driver that he is going to be rostered in a bunch, I feel like. But at least from the betting side of things, he's 18-1. So to me, that's great value from that standpoint. I believe in fantasy, maybe you can get away with people in the mindset of going with the underdog surprise winners, and you can kind of throw in a Chase to sort of help you in that aspect, sort of cover the rest of the board.
Yeah, the only thing that frustrates me about Chase is that he is definitely one of the super speedway type guys, especially here at Daytona. 29th in 2022, 38th in 2023, 4th and 14th. Finishes have been all over the place, but again, it's a super speedway. He could be 4th, he could be 38th. You just don't know. So you gotta love that. But I think that's all for me in the B's, because I can't.
Me too. I think that's a stack B. That's a stack B tier for now. I think for C's, it's gonna. I think our A's and our B's are now good. For the C's, now this opens the door for some potential underdog, upset, long shot drivers. One that I have in the top of my mind, you kind of alluded to them before, were the Legacy Motor Club drivers. Are we putting both or at least one of them in the C's? Because I know their value is going to be pretty low for this one.
Eric Jones for sure belongs in the C. He almost belongs in the B. He's $7,000 right now. I mean, he's probably that low tier. I mean, he did finish 8th here at the Daytona 500 earlier this season, before the just complete disappearance of the Legacy Motor Club drivers from John Hunter and Eric Jones. But Daytona's been a kind enough track to him, right? He's got 4 top 10 finishes in 15 starts, 2 top 5s and a win. It's just frustrating because his last finishes have been in the 29th in 2022, 17th, 37th, 18th, and 8th are his last few finishes. So, I mean, it's tough because there's a slew of bad finishes in the 8th place finish, and you're like, yay! But then you're like, oh, but that was only one good finish. So, yeah.
I do believe in him, though. I feel like when we talk about drivers that, man, I mean, I guess the finishes lately haven't shown it, did wreck at that talent. I will say, with what we've been seeing in terms of the type of racing at these super speedway tracks, the fuel mileage, right? The staying in a straight line sort of thing for most of it until the end of the stages. The Toyotas had a really good strategy in Talladega. Had they not wrecked, unfortunately, the wreck that caused Eric Jones's injury earlier this season too, I think they would have been one of the packs to beat in that one, if not the one, and he would have been one of the drivers in the first, or at least top of the field there. So Eric Jones in 3rd. One driver I need to point out who we haven't ranked, and I think most people wouldn't even think about ranking him yet. That's Martin Truex Jr. He does not have the finishes here at all. But on the NASCAR betting preview show last night, Greg Mathern put out a really good sort of notice about MTJ to me. And he said this: out of all the drivers in the entire field, MTJ is the only one that has completed every single lap at Talladega or Daytona in this Gen 7 car. So 10 races, and he's finished on the lead lap of all of them. Now, the lead lap, he's probably been 20th or 25th, but still, to me, in his final season, full-time, I just kind of get a feeling that MTJ hasn't come through for us in the races he should win, right? And I watched last year's race back. He was racing for the regular season championship. He won a stage. He was within the top 10, racing up front all day. I don't know. This one, people might shake their heads. People might call me crazy, But when we see Martin Truex Jr. in victory lane at Daytona this week, I don't. What is did I sell him enough to be a C tier for you this one?
A C tier, yes. Yes,
Okay.
I could definitely get behind a C tier on this one. Any higher, I'm not necessarily sure I could get completely behind. Maybe if we were talking a couple of years ago, yeah, sure, I could get behind that. But yeah, I mean, a C tier driver, that's probably where I feel most comfortable with him as well. I know Brian Twining checking in saying Austin Cindric should be an A on super speedways. Look, I get it, but here's the thing. You want me to read off his finishes, Brian, at Daytona? 15th in the 33. He won. Yay. Right. Back that fantastic win. But since then, a third place finish. Yay. But the last three, 23, 37, 22nd. I don't know if he was meant to be joking, but that's kind of where it was. Talladega finishes of 21st, 9th, 26th, 5th, 23rd. Off and on. So yeah. Love you, Brian, but I don't know if finishings mean nothing. No, and I get that because it is a super speedway, right? He could be in there too, but I mean, when you're digging up data, you gotta go on something, right?
I don't know. So I feel like I'm siding with Cindric a little bit because it seems like he has been a one-trick pony, if you want to say, right? That's at least how Greg put it last night. And then he said super speedways are his trick. Like this is where he does sort of rise to the top. He's locked into the playoffs, right? He can go all out. He can try to do the best he can. He can go and be aggressive. I'll agree with not an A, but does that put him at a B if we want to compromise here?
I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at his loop stats right now, and it's like top 15 laps, percentage of time in the top 15 laps last year or this spring was 69. The year before that, 43, 86, 32, 87, 83. Is that good enough numbers for you to put him in a B tier? Like I said, the finishes have been horrendous, and the loop stats don't even show you that he's running 85% of that means he's getting caught up in something at the end. So you're looking for results. Like I get that you are judging a guy by where he runs, but ultimately it's about the results, right? You don't get points, you don't cash a ticket because he was 83% in the top 15 running in the top 15, right?
That's true. Okay, so then is he a C?
I think he's a C. I think he's a
solid
C.
That's fair.
Put him at the beginning of the C's. That way we can at least satiate some folks.
That's fair. I think that's a good call there. One thing I want to point out, Charles saying Gilliland should also be in this convo. I completely agree. At Talladega, Todd Gilliland finished in 8th. And Todd Gilliland this season led a lot of laps at Atlanta. And that was like real. He's also led laps this season, strategy-wise and whatever, staying out when people pit. But at Atlanta, I saw him actually just dictating the front of the field and being one of the strongest forwards in that race. We also know Front Row Motorsports. Now, if we're talking about Gilliland, I think we can put Todd Gilliland, Michael McDowell, 1-2 in the C tier here. That could be a nice way to get rid of these two guys from the board. We'll put McDowell first. I feel like that's fair, but also Gilliland is a good C pick in this one. Rod, where do you want to take things next? Oh, before we do that, Charles saying, where do we put LaJoy? Do you have an answer for him now?
I am contractually obligated to say that LaJoy is a fantastic super speedway racer and that he will win every single super speedway race. However, I'll go ahead and put him up in the C's behind the 38 because, look, Corey LaJoy, you can rattle off a ton of stats again for him. And my co-host has a Corey LaJoy picture he likes to hold up every time he talks about him. He car lifted LaJoy this week, as he always does at super speedways. But I'm still not sold because at the end of the day, LaJoy ends up on his hood. And like, it's tough to see, but it's Carson Hocevar. Actually, tell you what, let's put Carson Hocevar above both of the Legacy Motor Club guys in the C. We want to talk about a Aspire Motorsports driver that needs to be talked about. How about Carson Hocevar? Put him in front of both Legacy guys.
We'll put Corey in the back too. How about that?
Yeah. But Carson Hocevar puts more of a conversation than does LaJoy, in my opinion. You see how well he's been doing, top 10 finishes a lot this season and running in the top 10. So yeah, I mean, I would take Hocevar over LaJoy any day.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think Carson Hocevar and Zane Smith and Zane Smith, to me, I mean, just the way they performed this season, especially last week. I mean, for Corey LaJoie, you flip your car over. Obviously, I'm glad he's okay. I don't wish him to flip the car over, none of that, but it's the facts. The car did flip over. He spun out, and that's what made the car flip. Well, unfortunately, his two other teammates finished inside the top 10. And I think that was just salt in the wound for him. And obviously, we know they're parting ways after the season. I hope he can, stay racing and everything like that. I'm rooting for him to do well, but the facts are what the facts are. I do believe we may see the 7 car there towards the end of the race up front like we have, but in terms of finishes, like you're saying, we've been seeing those other 2 guys just perform a lot better this year. Does that round out our C tier? I feel like we're looking pretty good. Maybe one other driver I sort of throw out to you to see what you're thinking about is Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe led 67 laps in this race last year, ultimately finished 30th, so there it wouldn't have really mattered, but what do you think about that 14 car? Could, with him being a Ford and also a driver that needs to make the playoffs, could that help him potentially be a C tier here?
Yeah, the thing about Chase Briscoe is the second you start to count on him is the second he totally lets you down. So I would much rather just not have expectations for Chase Briscoe and have him go out and run a fantastic race versus me trying to actually count on him to have a good race, because those are the days where you get bit in the ass, and I'm not necessarily wanting to do that. So if you want to put Chase in the C's, I think you can. If not, I think a D driver would be just sufficient enough for him.
I like that, and I think we can start our D tier with Austin Dillon, the number 3, being one of the, especially since we put Kyle Busch in the A tier. I think RCR is going to continue to bring it at the super speedways like we've seen. So we'll put the 3 car first and then Briscoe second there. Rod, anyone else you're thinking about as I'm throwing these guys up on the D's here?
I guess put the SHR cars, Josh Berry for sure. Yeah, the rest of the SHR cars. So go ahead and put Josh Berry up there. Yep, go ahead and put Ryan Preece, although Ryan Preece isn't going to do much of anything.
Well, Gregson, I just put Gregson over Briscoe. Yeah. Noah Gregson has been doing really. I talked about the drivers, right? My little stat from before. He's one of the ones that has a top 12 in multiple super speedway races so far this season, a 9th and the Daytona 500, and then a 3rd in Talladega. Raced really well there, stuck behind Brad Keselowski, pushing him well. Gregson obviously needs to make the playoffs, with a win. So I think that's a fair way to put those drivers there. We saw a Preece's accident from last year. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. But I think even with all those cars working together, it could sort of help them continue to stay in that tier there together. Do we put, I think one driver that we might have missed out on, Alex Bowman, would he be a C? I'm not sure. I feel like he's D. I think Kyle Larson could be D because he's going to be overly priced and not finish. But what do you think about the 48 as well?
Yeah, you put the 48 up there. That's definitely fine. I think he deserves a C. He's going to be running. He's going to be running mid-pack. I don't think there's a chance for him to really be in contention for the win, but he'll definitely be somewhere in the mix and not necessarily that bad. But yeah, Kyle Larson for sure belongs in the F category.
F
especially. Oh,
wow.
Super Speedway Kyle Larson is not a good Kyle Larson for sure. Yeah, everybody's like, oh man, he looks good. He's gonna, and like again, Cody says this every time. He's gonna be running in the front. He's gonna lead a couple laps. He's gonna be there, and then people go, oh man, see, you're sleeping on Kyle Larson again, and then he's gonna crash and be like, oh, that's Kyle
Larson. We even saw it in Michigan. Right?
Yeah.
like he's wrecking or he's winning, and if he's wrecking or winning at a super speedway, it's more likely he's wrecking than winning. So
100%.
Completely agree there. F tier. Hey, I'll say this though. First time I've ever seen the 5 car in the F tier. So it's a little shocking. It's a little jarring, but it's true. I mean, the facts are the facts. Brian in the chat saying, don't sleep on BJ McLeod, just riding around and winding up 28th. I completely agree. And do you have his value for BJ there? I don't have it pulled up in front of me here, but I feel like it's got to be one of the lowest, if not the lowest, out of anyone. And Brian, I completely agree with that. That's sort of the same thing I was thinking with SVG in this one too. Seeing those drivers that just are going to be riding around in the back, learning or at least just preserving their stuff as BJ is going to try to do. Although we saw him flying through the field in one of the other super speedway races this season. To me, I think that's going to be a benefit to him when the chaos happens, when the big one happens, to have a clean car and to miss the action there.
Yeah, BJ McLeod, $4,800, the second lowest priced driver on the slate. So for sure, I love that. I love the BJ McLeod call out.
Let's go.
Put Ty Gibbs up there. I'd be remiss if I did not placate some of the Ty Gibbs folks out there and at least mention his name. Because again, like I said, the sophomore slump is real, guys. He's really been struggling as of late. And Daytona has not necessarily been the greatest of all tracks for him either. 13th place finish in his first start with that 45 car, but 25th, 35th, 17th. Not what you expect out of the 54, not what you expect out of a Gibbs car. However, on a super speedway, just doesn't feel comfortable, I guess, or just decides it's not Xfinity when he was killing everything in Xfinity, right? He's got to play around. So, yeah, love that. Charles wants to go
me.
Oh, no.
Oh, we did not. And that was my next. That was exactly, me and Charles are on the same page here, because that was what was about to come out of my mouth there was Justin Haley. I think Justin Haley needs to be D tier for sure. He is a driver that, to me, consistently with DFS 2, he starts in the back. You know, they don't have the best raw speed at Ware Racing, but Justin Haley has exceeded expectations, overperformed in that car, and sometimes gotten top 10s this year. Top 15s even work. I mean, we know when we're betting or playing fantasy with some of these drivers, we know they're not going to win. Like, that's not what we're sort of working for. We're working to get top 15s, top 20s to make some points. And I think Justin Haley is a perfect example of that. In this race, with him being a 4-2, I think that's huge because the other teammates he'll have in the field. So definitely agree with that one there, Charles.
Yeah, Justin Haley, always a good super speedway play for sure. The rest of the guys, Tino. I mean, I'm looking at that 15 at Cody Ware. There's no way I'm going to take him. Harrison Burton is just not, he's a lame dunk now at this point, right? Getting out of that ride. Hemrick. Come on, Brian. You're picking on everything. I'm not even supposed to say his name. I'm contractually obligated not to say Hemrick's name. But yeah, Hemrick. I don't know. Tino, are you making any case for Hemrick?
I would go Hemrick. Yeah. The only reason why I'm thinking Hemrick is he finished top. So not only Hemrick and Harrison Burton, both top 10 at Talladega. I think just that alone, to me, obviously we don't like to go based off of past finishes, but if they were able to survive and get around the mess in those, I think that gives them a deserving F tier. I think that's sort of fair. We're not risking too much with those two drivers anyways. To show that we would play them at all, I think is fair rather than leaving them off the board. So
Indeed.
We'll go Hemrick and we'll go Harrison Burton. Now that leaves us with out of Austin Hill. Austin Hill is on the board here. I'm not going Joey Gase, unfortunately. Not going anywhere. No Parker Retzloff. But what about John Hunter Nemechek? Could that be a play for you in this one?
He just doesn't. He's not doing well at the end. Like, he'll run well in the middle of the race, but the end always gets him. Like, something will happen. He'll slam into somebody. And like you said, Tino, earlier, on a super speedway, if you're wrecking or you're winning, more often than not on a super speedway, you're wrecking. So that's a lot of what John Hunter Nemechek does too. And it frustrates the hell out of everybody. So yeah, I don't know. The rest of them just get mentions. Let's put it that way. Joey Gase.
Okay.
Good for him. I think it's a great opportunity for him to get out there. Austin Hill, love to see what he'll do out here on the super speedway. Know how great he is on Daytona in the Xfinity series. So good to see him out there as well. And then the 44, like we said, of Joey Gase. Yeah. So Parker Retzloff, though, that's another guy on the 62 making another cup start. I think that's going to be interesting for him now that he is able to run the car that he wanted to run, right? He ran last week in a car that wasn't necessarily the one he was going to run in this week. So it'll be fun to watch that Xfinity up and comer take on the big super speedway with the big boys.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. I think I'm pretty happy with, see, this board I feel like looks a little different than most weeks, but that's how it should be. It's Daytona. And we put the guys that are some of the best towards the front and some of the guys that are most known for wrecking at the bottom. And I think that's fair. And also another thing too that we got to keep in mind is the values of certain drivers, right? For Kyle Larson, he needs to be F tier because he's most likely going to wreck and he's one of the highest priced drivers out there. For someone like Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and we see another guy like AJ Allmendinger we mentioned, those guys come at a fair value, and they're also making it to the end of these races most times. So I think we put together a pretty nice board here, I'd say.
I'd hope the bosses are happy and they'll catch a lot of flack. But you know what? The best part about it, Tino, is that we get to leave the keys in the door, and they get to all of the bad juju after that. We're just going to go ahead and go back to our rooms and hang out later. So All right, that will do it for the tiers. I completely, again, it's not my house, so I forget where the rooms are. Skipped over the horizon forecast. So as we head into the betting portion of this, let's go ahead and look to what Daytona will actually be in the horizon forecast.
Hey, Michael, it was only 20% chance of rain. I think we got all 20.
Oh, rain is a bad word. Bad word.
That's true.
Let's never say that again. Hopefully Daytona will be. I think I looked at the forecast. There's nothing, right? Okay. Nothing yet.
Yeah, well. I think there's a little percentage, but that's Florida for you, right? That's Daytona. So I don't expect any rain personally, and let's keep it that. I won't even say the word again. So
Yes,
let's
I don't want to have to bust out my beep button. I've got one, and I'll use it if I have to, but I don't want to. We are again at the Daytona Motor Speedway. Looking forward to 2.5 mile large super speedway track. Obviously, we know some of the comp tracks or the other super speedways, or Talladega out there, and Atlanta, which is the brand new super speedway, but obviously it's still 1.5 miles. Doesn't necessarily comp exactly, although the packages are the same. Talladega, about a little bit wider than Daytona, so a little bit more room to play. Daytona is just Daytona. I mean, there's really no other super speedway like it, and when you look at how drivers do on these tracks, you're really just looking at Daytona and sprinkling in a little, okay, well, they do well at Talladega because the same package, and Atlanta to even a lesser extent. But as you approach this, what other things do you look at when you're looking at Daytona?
Well, I look at how these drivers have fared at the other super speedways this season. I think it's important to note that I'm not expecting each race to be the same, but if there are some drivers that finished, whether it's top 15, top 10, even top 5 consistently in one or multiple races this season at these super speedways, I do think that's something that is valuable to note. I know how chaotic the races are. I know, how many wrecks could take out notable drivers and everything that it comes with it. But I'm really searching for drivers that play a strong race or race a strong way in terms of, yes, they know how to make it towards the front, but they're willing to stay towards the back, let the calamity happen, and then drive their way back. That's something I'm always looking forward to watching. I think Bubba Wallace does it, and Ryan Blaney, him and Blaney, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. too, to throw all manufacturers in there. Those 3 drivers really do it the best, that from what I've seen. Denny Hamlin, another one too, but he's, the favorite. I really feel like from what I've seen out of those few drivers, they charge up towards the front in the early stages of the race. Sometimes they hang back or they get jostled back without their control, and then they're able to methodically work back towards the front. To me, if someone's able to do that, they have a strong enough car to make moves when it matters most. And that's something what I really look at. And I noted it too earlier on. Bubba Wallace, 2 top 5s at super speedway races earlier this year. It is just something he's really good at. And it doesn't matter, with what happens in the race. If he's just able to put himself in the right spot, that's something that I'm really looking forward to seeing in this one.
Yeah, and again, it's just about feeling the energy of the race. Like, that's the one thing about these super speedway races, is that they have the energy, right? You can tell when people are getting anxious. You can tell when people are starting to get a little too jostled in the front, and a good driver knows how to pull himself out of that and just say, okay, go ahead. You do what you got to do. I will make sure that when it happens, I'm far enough away that I can make a move. And it's not really that hard to move through. You find a good person to work with, or a good few people to work with, you can cut through and find a good third line and move it along. So keep in mind, this is a Saturday race. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern is the Cup race. The Xfinity race is taking the Friday night lights this time. Cup practice starts at 5:05 Eastern. Qualifying starts at 5:05 Eastern. And then on Friday at 7:30 Eastern, the Xfinity Series runs the WaWa 250. And then it's Sunday Truck Day, kids. All aboard for Sundays. The truck, the 4 p.m. Eastern LiUNA 175. That's going to be exciting for the Truck Series. They get all eyes on them on Sunday.
Yeah, that's something that I honestly didn't know. So I'm tuning in, like when I was doing my prep for this one and looking into who's racing when. I just kind of figured they would be on Thursday or on Friday, rather. Friday, Saturdays, Thursday, Friday, whatever the case may be, just not on Sunday with the prime time. And the fact that they get that, I think is good for them. They're also not at Daytona, which I didn't even know that either. I did know that their playoffs start now. So that's something that's exciting. I feel like the trucks have had a low season in terms of excitement, entertainment, with Corey Heim and Christian Eckes winning most of the races. And that's what it's going to be like. If you have most guys dominating for pretty much every race or every other race, that's what's going to happen. But I feel like the playoffs are coming in a perfect time for them. With NASCAR Cup Series playoff racing action happening, Xfinity happening soon as well. I think this is going to be big for the trucks. Hopefully they can capitalize on it and have a good race on Sunday, right? If they get a little bit extra eyeballs because of it being on the Sunday slate, hopefully that helps them.
Very, very true. Yeah, the trucks are at the Milwaukee Mile over there in Wisconsin to take on their first round of the playoffs. Let's take a look at some of the trends. iFantasyRace.com, our friend over there at iFantasyRace.com. The Asterisk Mark driver of the week is Joey Logano. Logano was second on lap 190 before being collected in the big one earlier this spring, was on the pole and was in control of the race prior to the green flag pit cycle. He led the most laps, 45. Best average running position was 9.7. Second and third, third best driver rating there as well. So we talked about it. He's one of the hardest guys in the garage to predict. However, he was the Asterisk Mark driver of the week for Joey Logano. Look, you guys pick your poison on Joey Logano. It's a coin flip each and every week.
I do have to mention some of the other trends going off of that. And I think we'll start by talking with Kyle Busch. He's a driver that a lot of noise is going to be following him in this one. We know that he needs to win in order to get into the playoffs. And he also needs to win to keep his winning streak alive. Can that happen at Daytona? I believe it can. Well, he has one win, 8 top 5, 12 top 10s, and 1 pole here, an average finish of 18.5, which is sixth best. He has a driver rating of 91, which is a series best so far, so that's good for him. 4,503 laps inside the top 15, which is second most among all active drivers right now. I feel like aside from Kyle Busch, another driver that we've been talking about a lot is Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace, 5 top 5s, 5 top 10s, an average finish of 12.4, which is a series best at Daytona. Driver rating of 80.2, which is 8th best, but I think with the laps he has inside of the top 15, 1,239 for Bubba Wallace. These are just some of the trends we're seeing out there from the drivers that have the most noise surrounding them this weekend. Bubba, too, obviously, -1 now, up below the playoff cut line. Can he get it done? The trends in the stats show he has a good chance to do so. And what about Brad Keselowski? Let's talk about him. Let's throw a Ford in there. We talked about Chevy. We talked about Toyota. Brad has 1 win, 4 top 5, 7 top 10s, an average finish of 22.7. So that's 13th best. Not really getting the finishes there from that standpoint. But in terms of the laps he's having inside the top 15, when we're seeing them racing and jockeying for position, Brad normally is in the top 15 with 2,955 laps, which is 8th most out of the series field here. So those 3 drivers, to me, in terms of the trends, I feel like those trends are faring in the right direction for them. And that's sort of the 3 drivers I feel like we'll probably hear the most about this weekend as well. Just everything around them, probably Buescher as well with Brad. But in terms of RFK, I think Brad and Buescher have a great shot heading into this one based off the trends that Brad is having for himself specifically.
Yeah, I think Busch is definitely one of the guys. He knows time's running out to actually notch a win this season to keep that streak going, first and foremost. And second of all, just to prove relevancy, his name's being tossed out there right now for all kinds of different rides that are not the 8 car, even though he's probably going to stay in the 8 car. Everybody's talking about him going somewhere else, right? So it's like, this is the time for him to just get out there, get it done, and stop messing around, because it's been a very rough season for Kyle Busch. So, all right, talking Kyle Busch, we're probably going to talk about him in the upcoming segment. I think it is time, as we have set this race up, to start talking about some parking garage props.
All right.
Start filling the betting cards up. Tino, what were your impressions of the books? What were you thinking when you looked at them and and saw what they were offering. A lot of times they give us a lot of good stuff, and sometimes they don't. So what were you thinking?
Well, when I first took a look at it, at least from my perspective with Kyle Busch specifically, right? We just talked about, we're alluding to talking about him here now. Well, let's just open the floor with him. I was a little bit disappointed at first looking at his value. Opening up at, the average, he opened up at 13-1 to win. That's not what I want to see at all. He has been terrible most of the season. RCR hasn't had really most chances to win races. I get that he, has finished inside the top 12 a couple times at the super speedways. Atlanta was 0.007 seconds away from winning there. But to me, I would have liked to see him 16-1, 18-1. Now we are finding him to win outright at 16-1 rather at BetMGM. So to me, I feel like that is more on the fair side. But with Kyle Busch having as troubled of a season and struggling the way RCR has this year, Rod, to me, I feel like he was one driver that I knew I'm betting on him no matter what. I just feel like the storylines show he's going to have a clutch win here. But that was one driver that I felt like was priced a little too low for my liking, regardless of if I'm going to bet on him.
Yeah, when you consider everything that he's been through this season, and I think maybe the fact that he finished well last week made everybody kind of go, okay, well, maybe we won't, because you figure he's going to get a lot of action. And I think the books don't want to get completely taken for a ride when he does finish well, or if he does win, because there's probably going to be a ton of action on him this weekend. So, yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I could think of too. I will say I really wish that there was still more. Like I'm a guy who loves crazy out there prop bets. I'm somebody who enjoys betting on so many different aspects of the race, and I was a little disappointed just as the overall ho-hummedness of it, right? I know Caesars has some good ones like the Exacta and the Quinella, but they did give us winner of stage 1 to win the race and winner of stage 2 to win the race, but I don't know. I would like a little more creativity still. There's a lot out there that you can put money on, and sometimes I feel like NASCAR, for all that it gets that's good, just could use that much more, right? F1 gives you so much to choose from. I think that's what I was looking at when I was looking at the books. I just wanted more. That's all. Just a little more.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And if we keep talking about it, maybe it'll happen. So I could definitely agree with that. One other driver that I'll point out, because I feel like in taking a look at where the books open up at and where they're at now too, in terms of value and stuff like that, I feel like Ryan Blaney, 13-1, Denny Hamlin, 12-1, Logano, 12-1, Brad, 15. Like, I feel like those numbers make sense to me. So in terms of the favorites, I feel like that was set at a fair value. But one driver that I saw that is normally one of them, Chase Elliott, 18-1 to win this one. I feel like maybe I don't see him having, I'm not betting on him to win outright in this one. I'll just say that. But at 18-1, it makes me think maybe I should. What about you with Chase?
Yeah, I'm still not. I mean, again, Hendrick guys, as far as the super speed, especially Daytona, I mean, I know that we just completely dumped on Kyle Larson, but the other three are not necessarily anything to write home about either. So I don't know. I'm not really high on the Hendrick cars for super speedways, but that may be to my own detriment as all. But are those your outrights? I mean, are those some of the guys you're looking at, or is there another outright that you maybe have circled out there?
Well, to me, I feel like starting off, if I'm going to choose any of the favorites, I feel like I have to go with Ryan Blaney in this one. 13-1 for him. He has 3 wins at super speedways in the last 4 seasons. And if I had to choose a driver that I feel like is the best out of these super speedway, type of drivers and always rises towards the front, it's Ryan Blaney. I even think he's kind of overtaken Denny Hamlin for that crown as of late. I just feel like he's been so dominant and can turn it on when he needs to, when it's time to go. With him already having a couple victories so far this season, and having a little bit of momentum too, I definitely like Ryan Blaney to be one of my first outrights. Another one's going to be Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace, 18-1. I love that value for him. I've been harping on him, and I feel like I sound like a broken record talking about his stats at the recent super speedway races this season. But the stats don't lie for Bubba. And I feel like with him being in a position, one thing that I was originally scared about when I first had that thought of betting on Bubba Wallace this weekend was, will they race for points? I don't think they will. I think he's going to go all out, because if you race for points and if you race scared at these super speedways, you're going to get caught up in a wreck. I think that's just how it is. Last year, he showed aggression. They kind of let him loose, and he ended up making the playoffs because of it. And I think with that being the case, and I mentioned Denny Hamlin being one of the better super speedway drivers, well, like he said before, he wants to push Bubba Wallace to the playoffs and make him win this race. He said that last year. I don't think much has changed. So Blaney and Bubba would be my two main outright winners in this one. Rod, what about you? Who are you thinking about first on the top of your mind in this one?
Yeah, it was definitely Busch. When I was first putting together my card, I had to put Busch up there because this seems like a race that he will win. I mean, it's the chips are down. His buddy just got himself a big penalty, right? And these guys, he just needs something to happen. And I know as a guy who's as emotional as all get out too, that all it takes is for something good to happen. And I think this is an instant where, look, something's good about to happen to Kyle Busch. I think he's going to turn something around. He'll win this race. Sorry, I keep hitting my mic. He'll win this race and get all excited about it and get himself in the playoffs. And, maybe I keep saying that his time is running short, but he's not that old. And I keep having to remember that because he's been in the sport for so damn long. It just feels like he's one of the old guys. But yeah, I'm definitely with you on Busch as well. And that was really basically the only outright that I feel comfortable taking, because everybody else you can make a case for, but you can also make a case against.
Yeah, I think that's true. So one driver I wanted to ask you about is someone I feel like a lot of people would probably be thinking about heading into this one, not only because he's a Ford driver, but because he won this race last year, and that's Chris Buescher. To me, my original thoughts with Buescher heading into this one is I'm still on the fence about betting on him. 16-1, I think that is fair value for the driver that is always showing up at super speedways, has the Brad Keselowski help and everything like that. But to me, though, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I feel like he's going to win next week. I feel like at Darlington, that's where he's going to lock himself into the playoffs. And I know maybe sometimes it's not the right mindset because you want to focus on the week, current week rather than the week ahead. But if I'm planning my outright betting card, that's something that is consistently happening in my mind, saying, well, if I don't bet on Buescher this week, I might have another shot next week. What do you think about Chris Buescher heading into this one?
My only issue with that is that as an outright, I don't know. Like I don't know if I could do it again. I don't know if I could put him in victory lane again, because we've seen them run well. We've seen them run inside the top 10, both him and Keselowski, but I don't know if I trust him enough to put him in the victory lane again this week. So I think you're right. I think if you want to do something, put him in a top 5, put him in a top 3, put him in, even a Quinella, right? If you think that he's going to be around the front, you could put him and Keselowski in a Quinella. In fact, do they have a Quinella for him and Keselowski? They don't have one right now, but if they do, I would put like a Quinella on him and Keselowski, because you don't have to worry about which one of them wins. If one wins and the other's in second, then you're covered on both ends of it. So that's kind of how I like to tackle that instead.
Okay, I like that too. And then it just also provides you with more value. One other driver I want to talk about that does have value, and I mentioned him when we're doing the tire tiers. That's Martin Truex Jr. I definitely sound crazy for talking about it, but I just feel like this could be storybook. In his last full-time season, getting his first career Daytona or even super speedway victory, he is 22-1 to get it done. With the JGR engines and speed they're going to be bringing, we know they're going to be fast, and also Toyotas, like I mentioned, how they raced at Talladega, the better strategy. Could we see that again? I mean, 22-1 for Truex. Maybe some people could argue they'd want a little bit more for that, but to me, I think that's just enough for me to get an outright winner, maybe even just a little bit out of me for Truex. He doesn't have anything to really back it up besides me thinking he's going to do it. But Rod, how crazy am I for thinking that?
Look, sometimes gut handicapping is the way to go, especially if you've watched enough of the sport to be able to form an educated opinion about it. But at the same time, Tino, you're crazy. Like I just, for as smart as you are, my friend, the Martin Truex shooter, but it could happen. Like I that's the only thing that you can really just say at a super speedway. Like I can tell you 9 ways a Sunday how crazy you are about Martin Truex Jr. And guess what? He's going to go out there, find the right line at the right time, surge up to the front and win. And then I look stupid. Or I could sit here and tell you that he's going to be, decent and finish poorly and look smart. So, and he'll get caught up in the big one and that'll be all over for him. So I can't tell you that you're crazy for that, because the range of outcomes on a super speedway are so big.
For sure, for sure. I want to know now, looking at the drivers that could be considered underdogs or long shots in this one. They could range from Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 40-1, Austin Dillon same price, Suarez 50-1, and so on. We see Corey LaJoie 50-1 as well. Is there any one of those drivers you're taking a little look at or sprinkle on because of the craziness of Daytona, or are you more so staying towards the front of the pack in this one?
I know Cody loves him some long shots, but if I were to look at somebody, I would probably look at Eric Jones 50-1 right now. It's Eric Jones. We talked about him in the tire tiers where he's the one of the legacy motor club cars that actually does perform well on super speedways, has some good solid finishes. And if we think Toyotas are going to be around the front, those 2311 Toyotas, those JGR Toyotas, all he's got to do is get hooked up with one of those, couple of those, and at the right time and get pushed to the front. We've seen it happen before. We've seen it with guys like Cindric. We've seen it with guys like McDowell that just find the right area to be in at the right time and to collect the win. So yeah, Eric Jones 50-1, that could be worth looking at.
I like that a lot. Hey, maybe Corey LaJoie too. I know I'm not, but
No.
50-1. I think I would need 70 or 80 out of Corey just based off how he's been running. But I know that's something that the people out there have been talking about. Corey, could he be back in victory? Could he get to victory lane rather? But more so be back up front at one of these super speedway races. He has been there in the past. I'll give him that. He has put himself in position. But ultimately, I just don't think with him being 50-1 for the best odds at BetMGM, that's not worth it for me to take a look at. But I do think that's sort of rounding out our outright winners. Let's get into some more props if you have any. I do want to hit up the chat as well, as Charles is saying he likes some of the top manufacturer picks rather than outrights. Okay, so Rod, do you have any top manufacturer in terms of the teams where they could sort of find value at from there, rather than the outright winners that we just talked about?
Well, it's kind of tough because if you're looking at the top manufacturers, the one that I like the most is the Fords rather, because the Fords seem like there's a pretty decent enough value in Ryan Blaney at 4-1. I know Joey Logano's at plus 280, but Ryan Blaney at 4-1 to be top Ford. Or if you really do believe in the RFK guys, Buescher's 4-1, Keselowski's 5.5-1, Michael McDowell, for those of you truthers out there, 10-1. If you really believe in Austin Cindric out there, 14-1, Gilliland 25-1. Like, this is a very open field. So, there's a lot of great value in that as well. And there's not quite as many Fords as there are Chevys for sure. And Toyota is difficult because Toyota, anybody in that Toyota camp can be it too. So, that's tough. Charles asking, would you still get down with Jones at 40-1 outright? I mean, all it takes is a little sprinkle, right? To make it 40-1 still good. 40-1, 50-1, we're talking big swings of the bat. So I don't think there's too much difference in a 40 or 50-1 for Jones.
I think 40-1 would probably be as low as I would go, though, for him. I did bet on, so if Daytona 500 happened, I think I got him at 35-1. And he was close there, didn't really end up making anything happen for himself. But to me, I don't think Eric Jones, with what I've seen out of Legacy Motor Club this season after Daytona 500, 40-1 would kind of be my floor there, Charles. So appreciate the question and keep them coming, guys. If you have any more comments, questions, concerns, or anything else you want to know about our picks that we're giving out here, let's continue on with the props. Top threes, top fives, top tens, or anything else you got out there for us, Rod.
SVG top 10 at 5-1. This guy is just improved. Like, to me, when he learns and he puts it all together, the rest of the sport better watch out. I was definitely skeptical of him early on, especially after the win at Chicago. I was like, all right, all of you guys are out there crowning him the best driver in the world, and you're giving him all these props, and that's fine. But we haven't seen anything other than the one crazy win in Chicago. And then he comes out, he's won a couple of races in Xfinity, right? He's won 3 in Xfinity. He's just putting together race after race that he's learned. And he's not a young kid. Like, this guy's been driving for longer than some of these guys have been alive in the truck series, in the Xfinity series. So I truly believe that he's putting something together. A top 5 at 5, or top 10 rather, at 5-1. Give me some SVG, baby.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Charles also potentially getting in on the action, saying plus 350 on Bovada. Hey, I'm even fine. I'm seeing him when I'm pulling up the Action Network here, plus 325 on BetMGM. To me, that's where, so 5-1 definitely getting down for 350 for sure. The lowest I'll go is 325. And I still think it is a gamble. It is a risk, obviously, but I do think SVG, that could be a fun one to watch. And also to see him I believe, I don't know their race strategy, but if I'm going to have a educated guess about it, it's going to be, they're going to be waiting towards the back a little bit. Let him learn, let him experience the draft. Don't force it. When you're ready to go. And if there has been, big wreck happening or anything like that, the inevitable chaos, like I alluded to before, SVG could just be waiting in the back. He could just be sort of buying his time, and then 20 cars get taken out. Here he is with a clean car, having a shot to get a top 10 like we're talking about. I think SVG will be in the right place at the right time to make that happen. Love the call out there. He was on my card as well. We talked about Eric Jones. I'm seeing him at plus 200, 2-1 for a top 10 there. Is that too low for you, or would you consider him for a top 10 in this one?
No, I would definitely consider him a top 10. And you're doubling your money. I've talked about this several times over, especially on the NASCAR show, the Gambling Podcast. We get so spoiled in NASCAR with 5, 6, 7-1, 14. We get spoiled that we forget that sometimes 2-1 is a damn good bet in the world of football or baseball or basketball. And so do you never hate doubling your money? I mean, and Eric Jones, we've said it before, like he actually runs well at these. And if I'm going to put him as a long shot winner, I think he's got a very solid chance at a top 10. So, don't go crazy. Don't go putting like 4 or 5 units on it, but a half a unit, 2 units, or a unit, whatever you feel comfortable with. I don't like to talk unit size. That's something that's between you, your doctor, and your bookie. That's all there is to it. But yeah, again, I think if Eric Jones, if I'm going to feel comfortable giving him as a long shot, I definitely feel comfortable at a top 10, even at 2-1.
For sure. I think another driver that stands out to me in the same sort of mindset where I would feel comfortable betting on him in this one in terms of a driver that would be a long shot, would be someone that is able to get up towards the front, is Justin Haley. I'm seeing him at plus 330 for a top 10 finish, and FanDuel, I think that's fair odds for a driver that is totally capable of doing that. I think he's if we want to talk about Xfinity Series, he was one of the best super speedway racers when he was in the Xfinity Series racing. So to me, I think I'm really excited to see Justin Haley potentially get that again. And at the same time, too, thinking about how much improvement they have made over at Rick Ware Racing, probably because of him, but also the fact that they have an alliance with RFK. I think those two things combined, throw him on a super speedway like Daytona, he could definitely be in the mix for a top 10, potentially following Brad and following Buescher, helping them out, being a Ford driver. That's another driver that I have on my card, Justin Haley for a top 10 at plus 330. Rod, what do you think about that? And is there any other drivers out there that you're thinking of as well?
If you have 365 right now, Justin Haley, 5-1 for a top 10 finish.
Wow, great. Thank you. That's huge.
I'm just saying, like, you definitely shop around for sure on that. It's crazy though that we're talking about Rick Ware in a positive light. That's always something, a weird feeling to it. But no, listen, I think that's good. I think I've got what I need out of SVG for sure. Floor on Haley, top 10. I mean, I think Tino just put out the floor on that. If you can find it any higher, like if you have 365, definitely jump on it there. But what was the low for you? Was 300?
Yeah, plus 330. So 330 to me, I feel like to know that the 5-1 is out there. Meanwhile, I was comfortable at the 330. That's going to be the top 10 floor for Haley here. Charles also saying some of us only have one book to get down on. Bovada, yep. Hey, no, totally understand. So to me, I'm looking for Bovada's odds. Charles, if you know Bovada's odds for Haley, let me know. But still, that's sort of be my same thought process. Even 3-1, I feel like is fair. Sort of alluding to what Rod said before too, saying top 10 odds are cooked. Oh no, that's not good. I don't like to hear that. But with Haley, I think 3-1 is great value because we are 250. Jeez. So now they're going down and down and down. So I mean,
lines, guys, quit moving the lines.
Yeah, for real. If that's the best you can get, though, it's still something. That's what I would do. Like if that's what you can get, that's what I would do. So I know I said 3-1 and 330, but that's because that's what's available to me. If plus 250 is what's available to you, and you feel comfortable betting on Justin Haley because of the stuff we have talked about in this one, I would, if I only had 250, I would bet that. So there you go, Charles. That's sort of my answer to your question there. But let me know if you guys have any other questions as we're about to wrap up the show here. Let's see what he says. Yeah, Bertle, they need to definitely legalize more sports books because that is pretty low odds comparatively. You were throwing out 5-1 highest to get half of that. That's tough. That's tough for Charles.
Yeah, it's tough. I know Bet365 usually has some really good odds for folks out there too. So it does suck to not be in any of that. So I'll tell you what, I don't like. Yeah, it's Brian saying try Cali, sir. Yes, Brian, you and I both know how that works for us. I have a theory, or I have just a belief on super speedways that groups and matchups. I don't like to touch, especially head to heads. I'm not a big head-to-head guy because there's just no rhyme or reason to it. Like at the end of the day, it could very well easily put it on the other side of it. So stay away from head-to-heads. Groups, I think the winning manufacturer is good, but groups are kind of the same thing. It's always a toss-up.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. On most weeks, I honestly tend to stay away from head-to-heads, even on regular tracks. So when I get to super speedways, it's sort of a no-brainer for me to not even place any bets there, especially when we're also looking at top 10s and saying we need plus value there. If we're going to get plus 110 or minus 110 for a head-to-head matchup, that's just something that I cannot, in goodness put down on my card because I'm not really comfortable with doing that, especially with we know how many different things can take a driver out in a regular race. You put them on a super speedway, I feel like that's a regular race times 10. It can be anything. It could be the draft. It could be losing the draft. It could be, let's say they get a pit road penalty and then their laps down. So many different things that can happen. Only plus money head to heads, which books stop giving us. Yeah, there you go. So now anything else out there, you really can't find at this point. So definitely agree with that, Brian. But Rod, anything else you're sort of thinking about? Any Xfinity, any truck bets you're looking at in this weekend?
Well, I tell you what, I will special that I just saw real quick. I was talking earlier about the Quinella with the RFK guys, Keselowski, Busch, or Quinella plus 2,800 over there on Caesars. So that might be something worth looking at because I definitely think that's, like I said, if you believe in any one of those guys are going to win the race, plus 2,800 for a Quinella would be the one to do it. As far as Xfinity is concerned, I think I really do love SVG in this Xfinity race. If I love him here, I love him there. So his outright on BetMGM earlier this week was 50-1. Kind of check that one out because I think that's a fun little stab to take as well. But I love Justin Allgaier top 3. That's kind of my biggest lock of the week if I ever gave locks. 4-1 on Bet365 for Allgaier as a top 3. That guy just knows how to do it. He knows how to do it on super speedways. He knows how to do it all over the place. He just won. Last week is the week that I did not say anything about Allgaier, and he ends up winning. Every week I'm out there banging the drum for Allgaier. This is Allgaier's week, and sure enough, last week is Allgaier's week, and I was quiet. So I'm not making that mistake this week. Allgaier top 3, 4-1.
While we're there, though, talking about value, got to go back to the chat for a second. Charles saying Elliott and Busch are top 5, 18-1. I'd bet that. I would bet that. I feel like that's giving you the good value, and it's not for anything crazy. Like that to me makes sense. And even if it was something crazy, like throwing in a long shot driver, an undercard pick, that's fair too because it is Daytona. I would bet that. I think that's a good value. We're already talking about Buescher at 16-1 to win the race outright. Elliott 18-1. So to get both them to finish inside the top 5 for the same value, or at least around there, I would definitely place that bet. Rod, what about you with that one?
Yeah, those are fun to do too, and I think those are two good drivers that would be able to do it. And again, we keep pushing. If we keep putting Buescher up in the top 5, up in the win column, then it only makes sense. And all you got to do is get Chase to get in there as well. So I like that. Last for me on trucks, Grant Enfinger, top 3 truck on Sunday, plus 220. He has been doing it and doing it well. He's been putting himself up there with the Corey Heims of the world, the Christian X's of the world. He's on fire. A couple of top. Set runner-up finishes for Grant Enfinger and that truck. Definitely looking good on the upswing. I think a top 3 is well within his realm of possibility. I think a win is in there too, but I think taking him as top 3 for sure is good for me. And then Ben Rhodes, top 5, 7-1. Books are sleeping on Ben Rhodes. I think top 5 for him. is going to be doable, and 7-1 is a monster number. So make sure you jump on Ben Rhodes, who turns into Superman when it comes playoff times, and that's exactly what it is right now for the trucks.
Awesome. I love it there. I have no ifs, ands, or buts about the trucks there. I think you said it best. I'll be following along with those bets. One more that I did want to throw out for the Xfinity series before we close things out. If you guys have any comments or questions in the comments below, be sure to comment now, as we're about to wrap the show up. So I want to make sure we get everyone's comments or questions answered that we can. But it's going to be Parker Kligerman. They were hit with a massive penalty earlier this week. I just feel like maybe that could be some storybook where Parker Kligerman at 16-1 goes out and gets the win there at Super Speedway. I feel like he's a good Super Speedway driver, always sort of up towards the front, hasn't been able to seal the deal, hasn't been able to win in that instance, but I like the value there, and I feel like he's a driver that's capable of doing it. And with the penalty that was happening, he might be a little bit extra aggressive to try to get it done. Also do like the SVG and AJ Allmendinger and Justin Allgaier call-outs, like we were talking about all on the show there. But I think that'll do it for all of the betting action. We covered a lot in this one. We talked about the draft, or the fantasy and everything, the DFS tiers and everything like that. Put them on the board. Then we went and talked about our outrights and the placement props and the matchups and the Xfinity series and the truck series. Rod, where can people find you at? Social media, everything like that. The other NASCAR podcast, gambling podcast you got going on out there. Be sure to plug yourself accordingly so people know where to find you this weekend.
Absolutely. Follow me on Twitter at RJ Villagomez. There's a link in the bio to everything I got going on, whether it's here, whether it is the NASCAR Gambling Podcast with my good friend Cody Zeeb, who keep an eye out. We may even do a bonus live episode tonight for DFS. We don't normally do it, but I think we're going to do it this week. So if you're listening now, click that notification button on YouTube to let it know when we go live, and we'll do that. And then, of course, Sportsbook Review. I got stuff coming out there on the season, brand new NFL season, so I'm getting some assignments for that. So check that all out. And then listen, if you would like, I have a new site, and I'm trying to launch it. Got some stuff on there already, and I'm still just kind of building things out. We did a soft test run during the Olympics. It's soyouLikeSports.com. Go check it out. Go read some of the stuff. It's all old at this point, but let us know how you like it. And if you want more of it, we get deep in the weeds with sports. So we've got some Korean baseball up there. We had some Australian rules football, some handball, some volleyball. Yeah, all kinds of great stuff. We're going to continue to try to do that cornhole as well. So yeah, soyouLikeSports.com. Get there, check it out. Let me know if you want more of it, because then we'll go in full force. All right.
Love it. I'll be locking into that. That sounds like a plan there. And you guys can also follow me at Tino, Pattigno, across social media. I'll be talking more about my picks throughout the weekend. Talked a lot about my betting card in this one, and it'll probably stay the same, but if there's any changes, be sure to stay tuned in there. So follow me on all the social media platforms. I also have my own front stretch podcast about Through the Gears, talking about NASCAR betting and everything like that. I'll be reiterating everything we pretty much talked about tonight. So I am looking forward to that. Brian saying, speak to us, Rod. He loves sports. He is in for that. So I'm glad to hear that as well. But also be sure to tune in to Series XM NASCAR Radio. I'll be on there tomorrow. Give my weekly best bet spots and everything like that. And also writing away Auto Racing Digest. We have some pictures in there too, if you guys like to read and look at some pictures there. So best bets, articles, everything in between. And looking forward to this weekend at Daytona, Rod. It's going to be a good one. I mean, it's the Summer Classic, right? You can't really get much better than this. So I'm looking forward to it. Appreciate Seth and Elliot for having us be able to host the show and be on the show here in the Backroad. Always love doing it. Love doing it with you, Ron. This is awesome. Appreciate the show and everyone for having us on from IBT family. Appreciate all the listeners and the comments as well.
Indeed. Seth, Elliott, the keys under the mat. We'll be back later on to pick up our stuff.